All right, good evening, boys and girls. Today we're going to, our lesson for today is going to be on standard form of an equation. And with standard form also comes the topic of intercepts. So we'll be looking at standard form of an equation and finding the x and the y intercepts. Okay, let's take a look at our notes for today. We're going to start with the standard form of an equation. The standard form of an equation is normally how you see most equations written, but it is in what we call the form of ax plus by equals c. And after we go through the notes, you're going to see how that works in relations to some actual equations. Mrs. Bryant is going to explain how they look. And here is an example of how one would look. 2x plus 3y equals 10, where a is 2 and b is 3. And then your c, of course, is 10. So we'll be looking at some examples of those as we go on. All right, let's first start with the standard form of an equation, and let's look at how we would graph a standard form of an equation. The first thing that you could do is you would find and graph the x and the y intercepts. Then you would convert to slope-intercept form. So in order to graph a standard equation, you need to know what their intercepts are. All right, so let's talk about intercepts. Intercepts are where the graph crosses the x and the y axis. So for an x-intercept, the point where a graph crosses the x-axis is where the point crosses the x-axis. And the x-intercepts happen when the y value is 0. In other words, when we substitute 0 in for the y value, we will automatically get the x-intercept. To find the x-intercept from an equation, you're going to replace y for f of x with 0 and then solve for x. And that is something that we've already worked on before, how to plug in to the function. For the y-intercept, it's going to be the place or the point where a graph is going to cross the y-axis. So the y-intercept happens when the x value is 0. So now when I plug in a value of 0 in for x, I will get the y-intercept. So again, to find the y-intercept from an equation, you're going to replace the x with 0 and solve for the y. All right, so now that's how we would graph an equation in standard form. All right, let's look at how to recognize standard form. When you see a problem in standard form, there's going to be a constant on the opposite side of the equal sign. The coefficients of the x and the y are integers, and x and y are on the same side of the equal sign. So if you look at the example that's at the top, we have 2x plus 3y is 10. There's a constant on the opposite side of the equal sign. The coefficients of the x and the y are integers, 2 and 3. And then x and y are on the same side of the equal sign. So here's our equal sign equals 10, and here are our x and y. So you should be able to recognize a standard equation from that. All right, the coefficients of the x and y integers, here are two things that you need to pay attention to. A has to be greater than or equal to 0. So A, meaning in this example here, this is A, and this is B, your A has to be greater than or equal to 0. And in order for the coefficients of x and y integers, the A and the B cannot be 0. So both of them cannot be 0 at the same time. All right, Mrs. Bryant is going to come and she's going to go through some examples with you.
Hello everybody, Miss Bryant here, and I'm going to go over with you guys how to convert the standard form of an equation into slope-intercept form, and how to convert slope-intercept form into the standard form of an equation. All right, and so here we have our graphic organizer. There are some steps you need to follow, so it only matches that we have someone going up some steps here, trying to be a little cute. So first step in converting slope-intercept form of an equation to standard form is, if any coefficient is a fraction, find the common denominator of the fractions and get rid of them. Knowing through experience how much children love fractions, if you see any in any of these slope-intercept form equations when you're trying to convert, immediately work to get the fractions out of there. What you're going to do after finding your common denominator is you're going to multiply the entire equation by the common denominator, to get rid of the fraction. So once you find the common denominator, every single piece of that equation has to be multiplied by that number. Once you've done that, you're either going to add or subtract the x and its coefficient to move on the same side as your y. So whatever the coefficient of x is, whether it's positive or negative, you're going to use the inverse operation to move it to the same side as your y. And then the last step, which is the most important step here, which I'm going to underline, highlight, and I suggest you guys do the same, is if your coefficient of x is negative. So this is after you have moved it to the same side as your y. If the coefficient is still negative, you have to multiply the whole equation by -1. And the reason behind that is this. If you look back here, the information that Ms. Looney went over with you, it says here that a has to be greater than or equal to 0. All right? A is our coefficient of x. So that means whatever number is in front of my x here, it has to be either 0 or greater. Negative numbers are below 0. So therefore, I have to change the entire equation to make sure that my coefficient of x, which is my a here, is applying to my rules of standard form. All right, so now that we've gone over our notes for today, I'm going to do a couple of examples with you guys showing you how to find the x and y intercepts and how to convert back and forth between standard and slope intercept form. So first we're going to look at finding our x and y intercepts. Well, here's my equation, 6x minus 3y equals 2. If I follow what my notes told me about finding my x-intercept, which I'm going to do first, I'm going to replace y with 0. And then solve for x. So that's 6x minus, that becomes 0, equals 2. So 6x minus 0 is just 6x. So if 6x equals 2, I'm going to divide both sides by my coefficient of x. And I find out that x equals 1/3. That is what x equals, but that is not my x-intercept. When you're writing your x and y intercepts are written as ordered pairs, because when you're dealing with the coordinate plane and you graph this, you don't graph this on 3 or 4, you graph it on 4, 0 or 3, 0. In this case, my ordered pair should be 1/3, 0. I'm just going to go ahead and forewarn you that if you do not write them as an x and y intercept, it is considered wrong for the simple fact that if you give me 1/3, I don't know what you mean. But if you give me the ordered pair, 1/3, 0, I know exactly what you mean. You're telling me the x-intercept. Just giving me 1/3, you could be saying, I need 1/3 apples, I need 1/3 bananas. 1/3 could refer to anything. So for your x and y intercepts, you must write them as ordered pairs. So I have my x-intercept now. Now I need to solve for my y-intercept. So, just like my notes said, I'm going to replace x this time with 0 and solve for y. So that's 0 minus 3y equals 2. That's negative 3y equals 2. I'm dividing both sides by negative 3. And I have y equals negative 2/3. But that is not my answer. My answer is 0, negative 2/3. So that is how you find your x and y intercepts. We're going to do that one more time. So finding my x-intercept, I'm going to replace y with 0. And I have x equals negative 3/2, but writing it as my ordered pair, this is my answer. So I have my x-intercept. I'm going to solve for my y-intercept. So I know what y is. So my x-intercept is 0, 1/2. So that is how you find your x and y intercepts from an equation written in standard form. Next, we're going to look at how to convert from slope-intercept form to standard form. And so here, number 1 is a perfect example of our steps that I covered before we started going into our examples here. So it said if any of the coefficients is a fraction, which this is a coefficient because it's being multiplied by a variable, then we need to find a common denominator. For our common denominator here, we're going to use 2 because we know that 2 will go into itself. So that was step 1, was finding my common denominator. Step 2 tells me that I need to multiply my entire equation by my common denominator. So I'm going to multiply everything by 2. That gives me 2y equals negative 1/2 to negative x plus 16. Step 3 tells me to either add or subtract my x to get it to the same side as my y. So since I have a minus x here, I'm going to add x to both sides. That's gone. I'm left with 16. So I have x plus 2y equals 16. My coefficient of x is 1 or greater, so I don't need the last step in converting. So here I have my final answer. All right. We're going to go through those steps again, just in case you might have missed something. Looking at the second example, I have y equals negative 5x plus 15. I don't have any fractions, so I don't need to do 1 or 2. So I can move straight to step 3. All right. So I have a negative 5x here. So I'm going to add 5x to both sides. And I have 5x plus y equals, that cancels, 15. And I'm done. So hopefully you guys are paying very close attention because not only are we showing you how to do this, we're showing you our expectation for work. Okay? And our last set of examples is how to convert to slope-intercept form. So here I have standard form, and I need to change it into slope-intercept form. And we're going to go over how to do that. Well, we know this is slope-intercept form. So that means I have to get y by itself. So I have to move my x and its coefficient in order to do that. So for our first question here, we have 3x minus 9y equals 27. So what I'm going to do is I know that y has to be by itself in order for it to be in slope-intercept form. So I know I need to move this 3x. Since this is a positive 3x, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. All right. So I'm almost there. If I look at my slope-intercept form again, I notice that the coefficient is 1. Not 9, not any other number. So in order to turn the coefficient of negative 9 into 1, I'm going to have to divide not only negative 9y, but the other side of my equation by negative 9 as well. This goes back to our adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing inequality rules for equations. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So I'm dividing both sides by negative 9. Negative 9 divided by negative 9 gives me my 1y, so I was successful there. I'm going to rewrite this differently, which would be still the equivalent of what I've written before. Just breaking it up so that you can better see how I'm getting my answer. So now I have negative 3x divided by a negative 9, so that gives me a positive. 3 over 9 is 1/3 x. And I have a positive 27 being divided by a negative 9 minus 3. So there, I just converted standard form into slope-intercept form. Let's do that one more time, just to make sure we understand. So looking at my second example, I have x plus 2y equals 14. I know that slope-intercept form again is y equals mx plus b, so that tells me I need to move my x to the other side. This is a positive 1x, so I'm going to subtract x from both sides. And I'm left with 2y equals negative x plus 14. My coefficient is 1. My coefficient here is 2. So that tells me I need to divide everything by the coefficient of y, which is 2. 2 divided by 2 gives me my y. Negative 1 divided by 2 is negative 1/2. And 14 divided by 2 is 7. So there I have my equation 4, or slope-intercept form, excuse me, of x plus 2y equals 14. Hopefully these notes and these examples helped you to understand how to find your x and y intercepts, how to convert slope-intercept form to standard form, and then how to convert standard form into slope-intercept form. If you have any further questions, please contact your math teacher. We will be more than glad to help, or you can look at this video as many times as you need. Other than that, that is all that we have for you guys for today. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.